Well, good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. It was a testy weekend between the president and the press who cover him. Those of you with better things to do may not have seen it, but Saturday was the night of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's the party where Washington's finest play dress up and pretends it's the Oscars here in D.C. The party was a little different this year, though. Not only did the media's preferred candidate fail to win last year's presidential election, a fact that was so crushing for many in the press that some literally cried on camera, but the election's actual winner did not bother to show up. Even though President Trump wasn't there, he did not ignore it. Watch this.
Media outlets like CNN and MSNBC are fake news. Fake news. And they're sitting and they're wishing in Washington. They're watching right now. They're watching. And they would love to be with us right here tonight. But they're trapped at the dinner, which will be very, very boring. But next year, maybe we'll make it more exciting for them in Washington and we'll show up. But we have a good chance of showing up here again next year, too.
Will he make that dinner great again? Meanwhile, at the dinner itself, White House Correspondents Association President Jeff Mason used his speech to complain about the president's treatment of the press. Watch.
Tonight looks a little different, but the values that underpin this dinner have not changed. In fact, I think they've been reinforced. We are here to celebrate good journalism. We are here to celebrate the press, not the presidency. And I am happy to report, for anyone who's interested, that this dinner is sold out. Our job to report on facts and to hold leaders accountable. That is who we are. We are not fake news. We are not failing news organizations. And we are not the enemy of the American people.
That was Jeff Mason. We lured him to our studio tonight, and he joins us live. Jeff, good to see you.
Nice to see you, Tucker.
So I agreed with your line that the point of the press, the reason for being, is to hold the powerful accountable. I would disagree that they do that consistently. But the dinner on Saturday night, which I did not attend but watched a tape of, was basically an extended middle finger to the president, an expression of dislike for the president. And the press shouldn't like or dislike politicians either, should it?
I totally disagree with you.
Were you there?
Was I there? You just played my clip, man.
I know, but you were like sober and watching?
Yeah, I was there. I was participating. And what you didn't do just now is play the clip in which I said, access under the Trump administration has been good. Yeah. Because it has. So I would disagree with the way you introduced this by saying we complained about the Trump administration. What we did was we said this is what has gone well, and what has gone well is we have had good access, and that is important for White House.
Well, not just good access, but overwhelming, maybe too much access.
But beyond talking about access, we also talked about the First Amendment, and the White House Correspondents Association stands up for the rights protected by the First Amendment, and it is a clear undermining of those rights when you hear some of the rhetoric that President Trump is employing.
Because I mean, the First Amendment is being challenged and in fact ignored on college campuses across the country where papers can't print what they want, speakers are shouted down. I haven't heard the White House Press Association say word one about that.
The White House Correspondents Association has its lane, and it's to reach out and protect
that's a fair response.
The press and the White House correspondents.
That's absolutely right. But I haven't seen journalists who make their living under the protections of the First Amendment say really anything about the actual threats to the First Amendment, which are unfolding on campus now. More broadly, why is that, I wonder?
Well, I can't speak for all journalists.
Well, sure, you
certainly I agree.
You kind of can. You're the head of the White House Correspondents Association.
No, I can speak for the White House Correspondents Association, and that's it. Now, there's no
troubled by that?
Am I troubled by any threat to the First Amendment?
Yes.
Absolutely.
So the speakers, the tone in the room, I mean, I watched the whole thing. Again, I was not there.
Yeah, why didn't you come?
But basically, because I was not in town.
Okay.
But basically it was, President Trump doesn't like us.
No, it wasn't.
And we don't like him back.
That's just not true.
Did you see that? Look, so I've been going to these things for 25 years.
Mm-hmm. I wish you would come to this.
I've never seen a lamer speaker or one who was just more openly partisan, the kid you hired from The Daily Show, to come. I mean, not only was not like funny, but it was basically
in his 30s, and he did a great job. But
you really thought that was great?
I think he did a really good job.
Okay.
And I think the night was about, if you look at the broad picture of that dinner, beyond just having a comedian, which we traditionally have.
Yeah.
You had Bob Woodward, you had Carl Bernstein, you had a video, you had the scholarship winners, and you had the award winners showing what the White House Correspondents Association is all about and the importance of good journalism.
So,
how did you feel about, did you listen to Bob Woodward? And
yeah, I watched Woodward and Bernstein. Yes, look, I'm for the first. I thought the whole evening was arranged around a response to a guy who wasn't there.
The whole evening was arranged around the First Amendment and the
right. I guess
talking about the importance of what we do and not about the president.
You don't need to convince me of that. It's all I've ever done. But I do look at the numbers from the public who believe that the press isn't straight, and I think it's a real threat to our business, and it's a real threat to sort of everything that we represent and do in the media if people don't believe us. And one of the reasons they don't believe us is because the way the last election was covered, which was overwhelmingly in favor of one candidate over another. And that's not surprising given there's no political diversity in the press corps. As you know, Politico did a study on this. How many registered Republicans in the White House press corps? Let me do the math. 0. That's a huge problem, don't you think?
I think I'm a registered independent myself. I think it's very important to be independent and neutral as a reporter, particularly when you're covering politics and covering the White House. I think that's extremely
important. I agree with
you.
Do you think that the people covering the White House rise to that standard? Do you think they're objective?
I do.
Do you read their Twitter feeds?
I can't speak for every single member of the association. I can't speak for the way every single person does.
Let's just be real. We both have...
No, let me answer your question. I do think it's very important to be neutral. I do think it's very important to report the facts. Right. I think it's very important to report robustly what the president is doing, and I think you should do that regardless of whether the president is a Republican or a Democrat.
I agree with that vehemently, but let's just drop the pretense. Here's the pretense. The pretense of objectivity or independence. The press in Washington hates Donald Trump. Now, he baits them. It's a two-way deal. He doesn't like them, and he goads them. But they rise to the bait every time, and in so doing, they reveal what they really think politically, and that undermines their credibility. You have to see this, because we're marinating in it. Do you not acknowledge that's happening?
I would acknowledge that it's important that when reporters, be they correspondents on television or print reporters at the New York Times or Reuters or any other news organization, that if they make a mistake, that they should correct it. And I think that's important. I think having bias is not acceptable. I think that it's important, however, also to know when you're a consumer of news, whether you're looking at a program that is biased or is not. And there are avenues, as you well know, at places like Fox, at places like other networks, where if you watch TV, you're going to get a certain angle, you're going to get a certain opinion. Know what you're watching, know what you're reading.
Look,
correspondents who report for those organizations need to stay in their lane as well.
But they're not. And look, I do an opinion show. I've never been shy about my opinions. I tell the truth.
Do you think people who watch your show know that it's an opinion show?
Yeah, I mean, I give my opinions constantly. I never lie. I say what I really think. I'm not carrying water for any...
I suspect some people think it's a straight news show.
Well, look, I don't know why they would think that.
Okay.
Because I never say that. In contrast to the people standing in the briefing room who are telling us on camera, I'm just here to report the facts. And then you read their Twitter feed, and they're like, basically, I hate Trump. And this is a fascist takeover of the country. I mean, they are out in the open liberal. And I would think...
Do you have a specific example?
Well, we've done like 15 shows on this. I mean, and I know a lot of these people, and they've always kind of been liberal, but it's totally open. I mean, the New York Times correspondents, for example, we had the ombudsman for the New York Times on the show, read all these tweets from those people, her correspondents, she couldn't defend them. I'm just saying, as the head of the association, don't you feel that the credibility of the reporters you represent is undermined when they wave their opinions around in public?
I think it is important to report the facts and the news and to stay neutral.
Okay, so you would encourage your members not to reveal their political biases in public?
Look, it's not the Correspondents Association's job to tell our members how to do their jobs. It's just not. But we stand up for the values of truth, for the values of reporting the facts, and the value of the First Amendment, which is to have access to the president, to be able to do our jobs, and that's why we advocate for it.
But the idea that your readers or viewers believe you is central, not just to your business model.
It is.
Right. Okay. So if you had a White House press corps that was 100% middle-aged white men, there would be a full-blown outcry about the lack of diversity. And I bet you $100 you would weigh in and say, you're right, this doesn't look like America. If you have not a single registered Republican in a country in which the Congress, the majority of governorships, and the White House are held by Republicans, that doesn't look like America at all. And yet, I don't think you're doing anything about it, are you?
Well, here's the thing. The White House Correspondents Association, and that's what I'm representing on your show tonight, has no impact over who our members hire. I can't tell Fox, which is a member of the White House Correspondents Association, you need to send this person.
I'm not asking you to be the HR department. I'm just.
Well, you are. You're saying I wouldn't do anything.
I'm saying, why don't you say something about it? If there was no racial or ethnic diversity, you would say, presumably, you'd say, this isn't right. Do you think it's okay that there are 0 registered Republicans in the White House press corps, according to Politico?
I think what's important is that we have a press corps that's made up of journalists who report the truth and who robustly report on the President of the United States.
So diversity doesn't matter in this.
Of course diversity matters.
Oh, but not political diversity.
But diversity is very important, Tucker, but it is important to me in the role that I play.
That doesn't sound important at all to you. No, we're almost at time, but is political diversity important to you?
Is diversity important?
Political
of course.
diversity.
Is it my job to talk about what journalists of the White House and the White House press corps do? Yes.
Right.
What they do is report the news regardless of what political party controls the White House.
I wish I believed that. I don't. Jeff, thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Time now for News Abuse, where we highlight the excesses of the American media. We try to do that frequently. President Trump sat down with Eric Bolling of Fox today. He said that despite his rhetoric on Saturday, he doesn't actually hate the press, except sometimes he does. Watch.
And I'm not talking, not all of the media. I'll tell you, just that is unfair the way they cover me, because they say the media, I'm against the media. I'm not against the media. I'm against the fake media. If you look at CNN, the way they cover me, no matter what you do, it's negative, hits. So I love the media. I think the media is great. And if I do something bad, treat me badly. But they don't tell it like it is.
Joe Concha is a media reporter for the Hill newspaper. He was there on Saturday night at the Correspondents' Dinner, and he joins us. Joe, what'd you think?
What I think of the White House Correspondents' Dinner?
Yeah.
I think first I'd like to comment on Jeff Mason's interview that you just did, because he spoke there that night, and I'm utterly curious and confused here. He admitted to you that under the Trump administration, Tucker, that there's never been better access. And all I know is when I watch the daily press briefings, Sean Spicer takes more questions than Josh Earnest ever did. There's more reporters in that room because of Skype and because other press passes have been given out to different kinds of reporters than ever before. I know that President Trump gave 9 major interviews last week, including with outlets like the Washington Post, Fox News, CBS News, Associated Press, Reuters, Wall Street Journal. Then I hear him on Saturday night say, there are threats to press freedoms here in the United States. We must remain vigilant. The world is watching. And I got a First Amendment pin when I walked into that dinner. So wait, I don't get it. On one hand, the Trump administration is totally about access, and on the other hand, there are press freedoms being threatened. How does that square exactly, Tucker?
So I think what the references to is changing of libel laws. Do you think that's going to happen?
Well, those comments were made by Reince Priebus on Sunday. Jeff Mason made his comments on Saturday. Do I think they'll be changed? I don't know. I can't answer that question. But look, it's very hard if you're a public figure to sue an outlet if they report negative news about you. That's completely false. You have to show damages. You have to show that that there was actual damages that occurred, and you hardly ever see anybody who went outside of Hulk Hogan who sued Gawker out of existence. But otherwise, you really don't see it happen very often.
So I wasn't there. I was on the other side of the continent. I usually go. But watching the tape of it as I did today, it seemed from beginning to end hostile to the president. And let me just be totally clear. I think reporters, I think their job is to hold the powerful to account and to apply a lot of scrutiny to people in power. But this seemed personal. Did it feel that way there?
Absolutely, it seemed personal. No question about it. There's a vitriol towards Donald Trump, Tucker, that we have never seen with any other president. And I base that on numbers. That's not my opinion. Media Research Center, I get they're conservative, but they did a study that showed 89% of stories are negative towards Donald Trump. Okay, let's go to the Swedes. They have a company called Media Tenor research firm. 97 out of 100 stories by the CBS Evening News and the NBC Nightly News were negative towards Donald Trump in his first month. I get it if it's 65-35, it's always going to skew negative. But 97-3, that tells me that there's probably an agenda there. And by the way, a threat to the First Amendment doesn't happen when a president is mean to the press, when he's nasty to them. That's him actually exercising his First Amendment right. You could say it's beneath the presidency, but we're confusing Trump being mean to the press with First Amendment being suppressed. The First Amendment, Tucker, was under threat under the Obama administration. They spied on James Rosen. And not only that, at this network, James Rosen, and not only that, they designated him as a flight risk so they wouldn't have to tell him about the surveillance. They secretly seized Associated Press phone records. They rejected a record number of FOIA requests, Freedom of Information Acts. Those are threats to the First Amendment. Jeff Mason should have been speaking out about that at other White House correspondents' dinners. Parties should have been canceled or boycott should have happened under the Obama administration. Actions, Obama. Words, Trump. That is the difference here.
So let me just say, we've actually had Jeff Mason still in our studio. Jeff, would you like to respond to any of the things that Joe just said?
Well, the first thing I would respond to, Joe, is that, again, sort of like at the top clip of this show, you cherry-picked my words, and you guys are critical of how reporters report. You're leaving out a good chunk of what I said. I talked about access.
I said that. I said you said there was good access.
I know you did, but what you did not say is that when I talked about First Amendment, the First Amendment being under threat, I talked about the rhetoric that has come from the president.
Did you ever make that comment under the Obama administration that the First Amendment was under threat, Jeff?
I am the president of the White House Correspondents Association now.
Can I ask you guys really quick one question?
But you've been reporting before. Did you ever write about that before,
Let me
Jeff?
just ask one question here.
Sure,
we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask it to each of you. Do you think if tomorrow the graduating class of BYU, Brigham Young University, came to Washington and got jobs in the White House press corps, and say, 80% of the reporters working in the briefing room were graduates of BYU, do you, Jeff, first, do you think the coverage would change in any way?
Do I think the coverage would change in any way? I have no idea how the coverage would change.
Well, of course you do. Yeah, of course it would change. You don't think?
I think that it's important for journalists who come to be part of the White House press corps or any other beat have the objective of reporting the truth. Period.
Do you think, Joe, that it would change if people from a different, we call it diverse background, were brought here to Washington, not like everyone else? Do you think it would affect the coverage?
Problem is, Tucker, I don't think they'd be hired.
Yeah. Not in a
that would be the thing. They wouldn't get the chance to do it in the first place.
Gentlemen, thank you both.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
International May Day protests got violent in Paris, but the French weren't the only ones taking to the streets. Across the United States, protesters march in opposition to the enforcement of American immigration laws. In the Bay Area, marchers demanded open borders, shouting, "No ban, no raids, no walls, sanctuary for all." Steve Choi is executive director of the New York Immigration Coalition. He took part in today's protests, and he joins us now. Steve, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me here.
So I'm 47, so I've watched a lot of May Day protests. Imagine my surprise watching an International Workers' Day protest that was designed over 100 years ago to highlight the concerns of workers, foremost among them, of course, wages, arguing on behalf of policies that would lower wages. And I thought, boy, global capitalism is pretty tricky. It got you guys to advocate on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce. How'd they do that?
Tucker, it had nothing to do with that. Really, I was with 5,000 people in Foley Square and hundreds of thousands all across the country. And we were there to make a statement about the shared values that we have as a country. Mm-hmm. And that is that immigrants are part of the solution. Immigrants have been making America great for centuries now. Immigrants are workers, they're business owners, they're employers, they're neighbors and families and friends.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to join with hundreds of thousands of people all across this country in peaceful protest to make that statement that we are going to rise up and that we are going to fight back.
Okay, I mean, I kind of agree with what you said. I mean, I'm for immigrants, and they're all those things, and they're great. But they're also one of the reasons that the wages for American working-class families have stayed stagnant or declined, because when you have an overabundance of something, in this case labor, its value falls. There's no controversy about that. You're advocating for that. You're advocating, in effect, for lower wages for workers, and I just don't know why.
That's absolutely not what I'm arguing for. In fact, we said today that it's important to say that fair wages for everybody is important. Here's the facts. The facts are that immigrants contribute so much to the American economy. Here in New York, the state comptrollers estimated they add $230 billion in economic value. They pay $10 billion in taxes here in New York City. And New York City happens to be one of the biggest cities and is the immigrant capital of the world. We know in New York City that immigrants add tremendous value as workers, but also as employers and small business owners.
For sure, but I want you to track with me here, Steve. These are average working people. So let's say I work for $12 an hour and someone shows up who will work for $7. Do my wages go up or do they go down? They go down, and that's happened across the country. There's no debate about that. A lot of studies show it. The Chamber of Commerce and big employers are totally for it. But now you're for it too. And I'm just a little confused. Are they paying you to be for it? Like, why would you be for that? It doesn't help working people.
Well, they certainly aren't paying me for it.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm very sure about that.
Okay.
Here's what I would say, Tucker. The fact is, it's not that simple. We don't live in that. Simple. We live in a global economy. We don't live in a simple kind of equation where one person's wages go up and another go down. It's not a zero-sum game. And when you look at the impact that immigrants have, it's tremendous. And this is something that people see not only here in New York City, but all across New York State as well. In Buffalo and Rochester, even in places like Utica.
Okay, those are all places that are deeply in trouble, as you know, where the middle class is dying. The middle class is dying in New York City, as you may know. I mean, I would think that you'd follow this since you're on TV arguing on behalf of it. So let me just ask you a couple simple questions to see to what extent you've thought this through. We have about 1.1 million people coming here legally every year. What's the optimum number? How many immigrants should we let in if we want to help the workers you say you represent?
Look, I'm not an expert in terms of the specific numbers of immigrants coming in. Here's what I will tell you. Is that those cities that I just mentioned, not only New York City, but Buffalo, Albany, Rochester, those places, they're in dire economic straits not because of immigrants, but immigrants are actually part of the way forward. And that's been proven time and time again. Immigrants add value, they stabilize neighborhoods, they pay taxes, and they're great workers and business owners. We should be figuring out how to get more immigrants into those areas, not fewer.
But you don't know how many. You're making the case, but you haven't actually thought through how many is a good number because you're not going to get into the economics of it, but you're arguing the economics of it. So let me just ask you one more simple question. How is it if I work in a depressed post-industrial town in, say, the service industry, if a bunch of people come in who are willing to work for less than I'm used to working for, why is that good for me?
It's good because immigrants will come in, and we've actually seen this upstate. Well, immigrants will come in, they will help to stabilize neighborhoods, they work, they patronize local businesses, and they spend their money as well. It's absolutely unquestioned that immigrants will add economic value to these places.
Then let me just ask you a simple question. Why haven't unemployment rates gone down in those places? Just pick a town. How about Lewiston, Maine, which has got a ton of Somalis settled there. They're immigrants. Employment rates have not gone down. Unemployment has gone up. Why is that?
So immigrants are part of the solution, but they're not the solution in and of themselves. I would say that a place like New York City, New York City, when you look at the economy over the past 25 years, the economy has gone up at the same time the immigrant right has gone up as well. These two things are not coincidental.
Investment, but the financial services industry floats all of New York City, as you know. It has nothing to do with immigration. Okay. I just wish the left were more serious about economics. They used to be. I don't know what happened. Steve, help me now. Think about it. Come back on. I appreciate it.
We can talk about economics anytime, but thank you for having me on, Tucker.
Okay. Well, it's been months since any significant information has come out regarding Russian involvement, purported Russian involvement in the last election. But somehow, political rhetoric keeps getting hotter anyway. Last week, Democratic Congresswoman Maxine Waters of Los Angeles speculated that Congressman Jason Chaffetz is retiring because he fears exposure as a Russian agent. Well, this past weekend, she went further than that, believe it or not. She said it's already time to start talking about impeachment for President Trump. Watch.
This Russia connection is a serious issue. I've been talking about it for a long time, and each day we learn more and more about it. The Guardian article brings us even closer to the facts that something took place. Meetings have taken place. Conversations have taken place. I've always said that I believe there was collusion, and if we determine the facts, if the dots are connected, that there has been collusion, then I really do think that this president could be impeached.
Well, we have asked Congresswoman Waters many times to come on this show, begged her staff, and every time she has declined. We're still hoping. Instead, tonight, we turn to Zach Petkanis. He is a former DNC senior advisor. and he joins us tonight in studio. Zach, great to see you.
Great to see you too, Tucker.
So my question is, for those of you who are really on the wavelength, okay, who really understand the complexities of this Russia conspiracy, why impeachment? Why not life imprisonment, the death penalty? I mean, it seems kind of weak sauce.
Well, let's be clear. I mean, there are not a lot of us who are talking about impeachment. The I word that we are talking about is investigation. And that's what we need to do. We need an independent investigation that can get to the bottom of this, because the facts that we know right now are very damning and very scary, and we need to get to the bottom of it.
But why wouldn't, so wait, you're not telling me you're not going to defend the esteemed Maxine Waters of Los Angeles. She's calling for impeachment. And by the way, how long before she calls for a life in prison term?
First off, Congresswoman Waters is well equipped to defend herself. What I think we need to be talking about,
because I always see other Democrats defending her. Amazingly enough, they jump to her defense at every turn. But why not now?
I'm a big fan of hers. But the I word we should be talking about is investigation, an independent commission that can get to the bottom of this potential collusion.
There's an FBI investigation already going on. But I guess so. Unless you think the FBI. Do you think the FBI has been penetrated by Russian intelligence?
No, what I think is that we should treat this scandal like we would other scandals, and that there are multiple layers of investigation. That means we need robust Intelligence Committee investigations, which we're not seeing. We need a real FBI investigation, which we have. We need an independent commission to get to the bottom of this.
Why would we need? I'm confused by that. So if the FBI has not, as you allege, been penetrated by Vladimir Putin's Secret Service, okay, if they're not a tool of the Kremlin too, okay, and that's an open question, I think, to you. But if they haven't been...
I'm sorry, where would it open question for me?
Well, look, if the FBI is completely on the level, then we don't need a series of parrot investigations.
But why does this scandal deserve less scrutiny than other scandals, like the Iran-Contra scandal and others? Why does this one not deserve an independent commission
because there's no evidence that anything happened? Because it's kind of insane. That would be one reason.
Well, they had 181 Senate staffers in the Intelligence Committee working on that investigation. There are 7 that are here.
So you've already looked that up. So I guess here's when I saw her say that, you were the first person that came to mind, and I thought,
that really means
Zach is on this frequency. You're like getting the radio waves, okay, in your molars on this. But I was wondering, has she gone too far even for you? So my theory is that Maxine Waters really is the voice of the Democratic grassroots, the radicals. And I wonder if they're so far out on this Russia thing that they're going to make you look moderate by comparison, if they're going to force Democratic leadership to treat this like a war crime.
Well, I mean, we need to talk about where we are right now. There is an active investigation going on right now. The FBI is looking about whether there was collusion. The facts that we have right now in terms of the communications between top aides of Donald Trump and Russian spies, and we know that happened. I mean, Carter Page, he talked to Igor Devyakin in Moscow, who runs the division that deals with U.S. elections.
I'm sure he did.
We deal with Paul Manafort.
So you're saying Carter Page was a, quote, top aide to President Trump?
I mean, when Donald
that's like insane.
When Donald Trump was asked who his foreign policy advisors are, he was the first one.
He was on some list. He actually said he never met the guy or talked to him in his life. But here's quick. I've asked this to every guest we've had on this subject.
Sure.
Most other channels are ignoring the Russia thing because it's turned out to be such an embarrassing rat hole. But I can't. I'm never going to let it go because I so enjoy it.
100% not true.
Now that we're, according to the Russian government itself, moving toward war with Russia based on decisions the Trump administration made, do you still think it's plausible to claim he's a Russian puppet?
I think it's actually pretty absurd to say that we're on the path to war with Russia.
That's what the Russians claim. That's what the prime minister. That's what the foreign minister of Russia just said.
Number one, there were a couple like if you're talking about the Tomahawk missile strikes, there were a couple de-escalating moves directly after that. For example, Putin said that he was going to retaliate by cutting off communication between Russian planes and American planes. He ended up not doing that.
So it's a ruse. I knew there had to be, because I did take a couple psychology courses. This is a head fake then.
You've said this. I think that we should take Eric Trump's tweets at his word after the Syrian strikes, when he said, now this proves that there's no collusion between Russia and Syria. And so I think that this was done at a time when there was a lot of scrutiny that was placed on in terms of Russia.
Think, last
so the rhetoric got
So Eric
lashed
Trump is also a Russian agent. Is Ivanka too?
Well, I didn't say he is a Russian agent. If he is, he's a pretty bad one. But
okay. I want you to come back and just fill us in new installments as the conspiracy deepens.
Anytime you want, baby. I'm here.
Thank you, Zach. Well, today in not sending their best news, a previously deported illegal alien has been arrested after he allegedly sexually assaulted a 9-year-old girl. His name is Santiago Martinez Flores. He's got a criminal history stretching all the way back to 1994. He was deported back to Mexico in 2001, 16 years ago, but in a not-so-shocking development was able to sneak back into this country, after which he made his way to Portland, Oregon. Once there, he was pretty safe, since Portland is famously a sanctuary city where the liberals in charge regard immigration law as unworthy of enforcement. So guess what happened next? In February, police say Martinez Flores broke into a family's apartment and attempted to sexually assault a young girl. She was able to escape, but the attacker got away before the police arrived, and he was only captured a few days ago while trying to flee back across the Mexican border. Sound predictable but awful? Of course it is, but don't attempt to draw a connection between the crime and the immigration policies of the left, or else you're against diversity and, by the way, immoral. Ha! Ruff, who apparently is an actual person, has since been placed on leave. Connor and Lauren Haynes join us tonight. Thanks all for coming on, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Do you go to this school? And just give us, set the scene for us a little bit. How did this happen? Who was this guy?
Yeah, so we actually don't go to that school. I'm homeschooled, and we decided to go out to Downingtown West High School because they had a Holocaust symposium, so we thought it'd be a perfect opportunity to talk about abortion, which we consider the Holocaust of our day.
So, Lauren, did you all attack this guy, or did he just come at you? Does the video represent what happened?
We actually were not planning on going to STEM. We were planning on going to the other high school, and it was definitely, God had his hand in that situation, and he wanted us there, we believe, to be able to speak into his life. And we were standing there, and then he came out about 5 minutes after we'd been standing there.
Huh. Were you all using profanity or attacking anybody or doing anything that would offend a normal person?
Well, besides the fact that the gospel of Jesus Christ does offend people, no, we were not, cursing or banging on windows or anything.
Our goal of being out there was just to, engage with students about the gospel of Jesus Christ, that if they repent and believe in Jesus Christ, they can be set free from their sins. So we were out there talking about that, and then also about abortion. And just because there's a lot of high school students that, involved in fornication, so we can talk to them about, abortion and how it's wrong, it's murder, and just to be able to engage with them that's why we were out there.
Huh. Did this guy intimidate you? I mean, whatever people think of your message, of course you have an absolute right to express it, because it is America, or was anyway. Did this guy intimidate you?
A little bit, but honestly, that stuff, people have yelled at me before, especially when I've been out in Philadelphia and stuff, so it wasn't anything that I was too surprised by. So I was a little bit intimidated, but definitely not too much.
And definitely, I mean, we're, as Christians, we're promised practically that we will be persecuted for, this name of Christ, and that's what we see it as.
When I say.
Now, Connor, you're wearing a shirt that says abolitionist on it. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I'm not like a pro-lifer or anything like that. I want to totally abolish human abortion. It's actually a group called Abolish Human Abortion, and we seek not to regulate abortion, but to call it murder and what it is, and to completely abolish it in the United States of America, and just and doing that, bringing the gospel into conflict with child sacrifice. So that's what, why I call myself an abolitionist, just because I'm not a pro-lifer trying to regulate abortion. It needs to be completely abolished.
Well, that's a pretty countercultural message, and you have an absolute right to express it. Thanks very much, Connor and Lauren. Good to see you. There is so much weird news, an abundant amount of weird news, a surfeit, in fact, so much that we created an entire segment to figure out what is the weirdest of all. It's called Top That, and tonight, joining us, each to make their case, Katie Pavlich of townhall.com and Catherine Lyons of Famous DC. Catherine, to you first.
All right, stop what you're doing
There's a war on hand gestures. There's two reporters. They were taking a picture over the weekend in the press briefing room at the White House, and they held up a sign very often associated with the OK symbol.
Yes.
And cue the internet. Everybody went up in arms or hands, and now they're being accused of being white supremacists and basically alluding to white power because it's a hand symbol that is associated with white supremacy.
A-OK is now racist?
Yes.
To go like that?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're white.
Boy, I thought I was well versed in this stuff. I've never heard that. Is it real?
Yeah, I mean, what happened to the old-fashioned bird?
Exactly. But I think this is something that's even like okay around children. That means good job.
Yes, it's very innocuous.
It's like your teacher says it to you. Good job.
Can also be confused with the turkey.
Yeah,
which
but the
actually
internet
plays into our next segment, which might get me in trouble.
That's bizarre.
It's bizarre.
So,
Katie Pavlich,
college campuses, as you have well documented on your show, are out of control in the United States.
Yes.
They also, across the pond in the UK, are completely out of control. There's a liberal political student group there called the National Union of Students, and they propose that at any school events or at any of the events that they have for this union meeting, that they ban clapping and cheering because it's insensitive to people who cannot hear. Therefore, deaf people are not included in the festivities, and so this should be used instead to celebrate things.
Jazz hands instead?
Yes, and they say that clapping can trigger clapping-based anxiety, and therefore they should not be cheering or clapping at any of these events.
That's insane. So would painting be banned because it's insensitive to the blind?
Well, the question is, well, what about blind people? I mean, where does it end, right? I mean, I would say it's very patronizing to people who cannot hear to be pointing them out and saying the reason we're not cheering and doing this, which is embarrassing like 5-year-olds, is because you're ostracizing us and making sure all the attention is on our disability rather than including them in different ways. Imagine if they spent the amount of energy they spend on stuff like this, raising money to help research for deaf organizations or something like that. But instead, they're just focused on making sure you use the jazz.
You know, all these stories, I think we're going to find out in the end, are funded by some covert right-wing group to discredit liberals. Because that's too stupid. It can't be real. I don't even believe your story.
True.
Catherine, I know enough about the lunatics on the left-wing internet to believe yours, so you win.
Come close. Here's a hand gesture.
And you get our coveted participation trophy.
Oh, thank you.
Everybody gets a trophy
so we feel happy about ourselves.
Because you know what?
Good.
You're a special flower.
Yes, I am.
Thank you
in
both.
a garden.
That was
Thank
great.
You.
Well, Chelsea Clinton has received yet another award honoring her profound achievements in the rarefied field of being a president's daughter. We're going to start a whole weekly segment celebrating Chelsea. Because you remember just a couple weeks ago, Variety honored her at its Power of Women luncheon. Now she's been given the City Harvest Award for commitment for her efforts to help New York's hungry. But don't worry, at least she did something to earn this award by personally packing 25,000 pounds of grapefruit to distribute to the city's needy. Well, she didn't pack that personally, actually. She had the entire staff of the Clinton Foundation help her. Why grapefruit, you ask? Well, your guess is as good as ours. Maybe because that's what Chelsea thinks poor people ought to be eating. Probably not because that's what they want to eat, not that she cares, but grapefruit. The poor should eat grapefruit. Let them eat grapefruit. In any case, there's a lesson here for any of you out there hoping to be honored as great humanitarians. Just take your family's gigantic foundation, created by your famous parents and funded by their rich friends, and use it to do purportedly good deeds for which you take all the credit. Credit on countless magazine covers and at star-studded New York lunches held in your honor. Others work while you bask in the glow. It's all upside. Too bad Albert Schweitzer never thought of that. It would have been a lot easier. Well, that's about it for us tonight. Tune in every night at 8 to the show that is the sworn enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. The 5 starts right now. Good night from Washington.